Lesson 9.1, Square Roots. A square root of a number n is a number m such that m squared equals n. We use this symbol to represent square roots. It's called a radical. And in order to find the square root of something, it's technically just a number squared. It's the inverse of that number squared. Square root kind of undoes a square. A perfect square is a number that is square of an integer. Radical expression is an expression that involves a radical sign. Again, the radical sign is the square root sign. In example 1, let's find the square root. A community is building a playground on a square lot of land with an area of 625 square yards. What is the length of each side of the plot of land? Because it's a square, we know that each side of the land is the same amount. And it's the positive square root of 625. You need to think of a number that when multiplied by itself equals 625. Well, that number is 25 because 25 times 25, or 25 squared, is 625. So the length of each side of the plot of land is 25 yards. Find the square roots of these numbers. Remember, you're finding the square root. So you're trying to think of a number, a whole number, that would multiply by itself equals 9. Or a whole number, and again, you are finding the square roots. They told you what to do, so they didn't put the symbol. You're finding a single number that would multiply by itself equals that number. Pause the video, try 1 through 4. Raise your hand and see Mrs. Shea to check your answers. I do want to show you number 1 because not only do you have a positive 3, but you also have negative 3, because negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Just like 2 positives make a positive, 2 negatives make a positive. So all of these, you also need the negative. Sometimes we don't always have perfect square roots. Like the ones from before were perfect square roots because they didn't give you a decimal answer. We can approximate numbers that are not perfect. So square root of 28. Well, there is no number multiplied by itself that equals 28. The closest one is 25. And we know, or if you go higher, you can actually say 36. So the square root of 28 is between 25 and 36. Don't worry about this part. It's technically called a compound inequality. This is 36. So what we're basically doing is we're finding the square root of 25 and the square root of 36. I think that's what they put here. And the square root of 25 is 5. The square root of 36 is 6. So square root of 28 falls between 5 and 6. Now, I would say that 28 is closer to the 25 than it is to 36. So I would approximate to the 5. That's what they're saying down here. So I would say that the square root of 28 is approximately 5. Let's try another one of those before I let you do some on your own. The square root of 46. We know that 46 is close to the square root of 49. And we can also say it's close to the square root of 36. Square root of 49 is 7. Square root of 36 is 6. I would say this is closer to 49, so I would approximate that it is 7. Now for number 6, see this negative? The negative means nothing next to the square root symbol. All you're really doing is your answer needs to be the negative form. So whatever this answer is needs to be negative. So kind of ignore the negative at the beginning. Please try 6, 7, and 8. Pause the video at this time. Now that you've solved the problems, see Mrs. Shea to check your answers. For example 3, there is a way to use a calculator to find the square root, so I'm going to show you how to do that now, and you kind of have an understanding of what a square root is. Now our calculator is a little bit different, so I'm going to show you what our calculator does. You actually have to hit the shift sign, that's basically your second button, so you hit the shift button, and then you hit the square root. Do you see right above the x squared is the square root button? It's this yellow square root button. And then once you have the square root button, and then you can type in your number. You do not need to hit whatever this is. Don't need to do that. And then hit the equal sign. And your display is going to read something like this. Just round to the nearest tenth. The nearest tenth is the first decimal place. So, using a calculator, approximate the square roots. Round to the nearest tenths, first decimal place. Remember that these negatives in front just mean that in your answer, it's going to be negative. So I wouldn't even put in negatives at all into your calculator. Get a calculator, pause the video, and try 9 through 12. See Mrs. Shea to get your work checked. The last thing we're going to do is evaluate a radical expression. This is a radical expression. Okay, it does look a little crazy, but once you put in the letters, the variables, you substitute 6 in for A and B is 27. We're going to simplify the square root first. So you kind of have to think of the radical symbol as like your parentheses. So let's do this first. There's a square, so I'm going to have 36 minus 27. 36 minus 27 is 9. So now I have to evaluate the square root. What's the square root of 9? 3. 5 times 3, because remember, any time a number is next to like parentheses, and in this case the radical symbol, this means multiplication. 5 times 3, 15. I'm going to just do these with you quick so you have an understanding, or at least some of them. 13, negative square root, A is 16 plus 9, negative square root, 16 plus 9, 25. Square root of 25 is 5, and I only want the negative because of the negative outside. 14, square root, B is 9 squared minus 2 times 16. Do the square first. 2 times 16 is 32. Bring down the square root. 81 minus 32 is 49. The square root of 49 is 7. Please try 15 by yourself. Substitute in 2 square root 16 times 9. Pause the video, try 15. Once you're done, see Mrs. Shea for the answer.